friends, welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage, and today what I wanted to share with you is some more advanced techniques with the stamping that we went over in a previous episode. I wanted to show you some of the things that I used to create this asset here. This is a landing pad for our sci-fi ships, and as you can tell here it's been damaged, and in engine we're going to have some fire here, and there's going to be a character here that you talk to. So I wanted to show you some of the things I did to create this asset because we're under a tight deadline and we got to move fast, so I wanted to make sure I shared this with you. So last time we talked about doing the normal stamping, and as you can see most of these details are done using that stamping. One thing I wanted to say quickly is make sure you use the stamps more so than just one at a time. And what I mean by that is you can see this is one stamp, which is the square tool. If I go to the textures, there is a rectangle. Let me see. It's in here. Alphabetically would help. There you go. So rectangle. So I have this layer up here I'm using just as an example layer. So if I come down here and let's turn off the line I was using, and let's use our rectangle tool. And you can see here, you can see it on screen. Let me get rid of the alpha so you can see it a little better. There it is. Okay, so there he is, and this is how I made this shape here. So using the rectangle tool, I can change the size of this. I can make it long and thin. I can change the thickness of the bevel, so you can get that kind of effect. And then you can also change it from pillow, which does sort of a on either side type effect like that, to you can do an in or an out. And so this would be an in, push into the surface, and this would be an out, pull out from the surface. And this is an out shape here, as you can tell. So what I did was I combined multiple stamps. So I don't just stay with one stamp. I say, you know what, let's do multiples. And this is a good example. I did the rectangle, and then I did one of these up here. I believe it was this guy here. Yep, see? Stamp him right in the middle. And then, I forgot to put some screws there. Got to finish putting some screws on that. I put screws on all the others. You can see we got small screws for the smaller little bits there to screw that into the surface, and then some larger ones. And then here's another one of the stamps, one of these guys, one of these container things. And I believe some of the containers, I think this might be one of them. Yep, let's check it out. So if I turn this off, and let's bring this container guy over here. Some of the containers have parameters that you can change the size of them as well. I don't think this is the right one, or maybe it is, you have to rotate it properly. But they have parameters, you can make them wider or thinner, just like the rectangle. So that's super handy. And then on top of that, I just stamped again one of the handle things. So that would be kind of cool. You would grab that, twist and pull, and you could open this thing up. And then over here, we did the same kind of thing. So I do one here, and then I did an even further one, and then I did one in the middle there too to make like a sub panel. Here I used another stamp in order to make these look like handles to pull this up. And over here, I think, yeah, so we had the one, and then I put this grating just on a smaller scale in the middle, and then use the screws to kind of bolt everything down, make sure it's all looking nice. And over here we did similar kind of thing. I used just a circle, one of the indent circles, and then I put this shape in the middle of that, and then I put this in the middle of that. And then here I used this curved piece. I see it all the time, and I wanted to use it for something. Not that one, but there's another curved piece towards the bottom, I think. Yeah, down here with the, yeah, there he is. Really nice with the little bars going across. So I used that, and I had to do it 4 times manually over here to try and get it to line up nicely. So I moved the light here to try and see the shadows and the highlights as I put these down, and then I can move those around. And I put just 4 of those around and then added another smaller one in the middle. So I'm just combining these effects over and over again to create the thing that I'm looking for. So our next tip here I want to share with you is this corner here. If I come down here under the main wall section here, you can see there's this layer called Guide, which is currently hidden. So if I unhide that layer, take a look at what that does. There we go. So this shape appears. And I could keep this shape. It doesn't look bad, but it's not part of the original design. It's not in the concept art, so I decided not to keep it as far as leaving it there just because it looks good. Now what we did with this is this was put here just to help me kind of even out from the corner. So I looked at the corner and said, let me put a big shape here which covers the amount of space I need. And on either side of it, I looked for about this distance. You can even put your brush at kind of the right size and say, there it is, you can eyeball it, and then you can say, now if I make this big enough to hit that corner, there you go, like that, boom, it would be equally distant. Same kind of thing we do over here. Rotate over here. So now we can see over there, same thing. But then I don't want this shape because it's, again, not part of the design, so I just hide the guide layer when I'm done, and it goes away. Now I can delete the guide layer when I'm all done working on the asset. So what people often forget, and this is the point I'm trying to make, is just because you have a layer here doesn't mean it has to stay here. It doesn't have to stay as part of the project. You can hide things and then export. It's so simple, but that seems to be forgotten quite often. So I wanted to share that with you guys to make sure that you understood that you can use things to your advantage in different ways. You don't have to keep them, you know? Okay, also, another thing that I used to my advantage, which a lot of people seem to kind of forget, is if I go on my guide layer here, let's just work on that. So these details here, if I look at on the texture sheet, those are down here. Down here we have these stairs. And the stairs, one thing is that they're all identical. So if I were to paint on this, it would show up on all of them. They are actually offset. You can see the offset if I move this over. You can see there's one. There's some pieces that are offset as well. So they're offset so that I can paint one and paint them all kind of thing. So that's one thing. You have to do that before you import. But the other thing is this shape is not one of these default stamps that come with it. I didn't go through and use these, even though some of them look like they might have worked. What I did was actually used one of the procedurals. And I found a procedural in here that I liked. And I think it might have been one of these, like the mesh or something like that, where you can scale it down a whole bunch and you get this really nice pattern to it, maybe even something like that. And I used that as my stencil for the screen, and then I could just paint in the normals and say, lower the normals there. So make sure you use all of these, including, all your procedurals and anything that you bring in. I think it might have actually been one of these that I used. I brought in the shape one. Yeah, something like this, the shape of the circle shape, and just scaled it up so it repeated itself a whole bunch. And that's a really good tool to use, and then you can put some normal details in it. Making these assets look nice. We do a lot of normal map stuff like this, but if you use it too much, it can look repetitive, and you know that it was made from a kit, so that's why it's important to do things like the doubling up, or even the tripling up, add some different details, layer things together. You are literally painting, and people forget about that in true paintings are layers upon layers. They build on one another. They build on themselves. They build the whole effect. And I got one more thing I want to share with you real quick. So over here is a line that I created, and this line goes up, over, and down. And I created that. I forget the exact setting I used. I'm going to look it up and add it to the thing later. But I used, if I go to my brushes here, textures, there's a line tool in here. Let me find that real quick. There he is, the line. So if I bring up to my resource, there it is, drag this guy over. The line tool is really good. He's got some great parameters here. So you can see in here, and if I just click just so we can see it work, that's what we get where we're at right now. And if you look at the length here, I can change the length, I can change the thickness, so I can make them real thick like that. That's pretty good. Or I can make it super thin, which is what I did for these. And you can choose from in or out. So you can do in to cut into the surface, and then out to obviously pull out from the surface. And so using the out, obviously, and by changing my settings, now here's where I don't have the exact settings, but I'll find them and I'll put them up as a image or something for you guys. By changing these settings, I think it was actually back face culling I turned off. And by turning that off, I was able to do this. Let me check that out. Try it out together. So if I click here, it would go, all the way around. Yep. So that's what I did for that. So by a combination of masking, using the right mask to make sure I'm only affecting these shells in total, and then by making this true 90 degrees, and then I come down here and say, what kind of a line do you want now? Obviously I want to cut into the surface. I don't want it to be very thick at all, and I made it super long. And then I did have to scale it up a little bit still so that it would go over that edge. So here you can see that's about the right size. So if I click here, now I have another line, and it goes up, over, and down. So make sure you play with all these settings, because you'll learn that some of these settings can really help you pull off some neat effects, save you some time, because something like that line would be really difficult to do in here. Looking at this, some of these are just a little distorted based upon the way that it curves. You can see here, like, that line's not quite straight. And you have to do it on that shell, plus the shell that's the top. You can see here's the line going across there. You have to do it on multiple shells, and that's just not worth it. Whereas you can do it here and say, let me line up my camera, I know I want it to be about here, and click, and I'm done. So just a couple of tips for you guys. I know that stamping was exciting. It is exciting and it's awesome. But make sure that we are using that in combination with our other typical tools. Things like combining things and making sure that we are bringing true artistry into the techniques. The technique will help us get some nice details, yes. But if those details are going to matter, if those details are really going to make the piece shine, that's up to us. That's up to us to make sure that we're using them in smart ways. So, as always, guys, I hope that this has been very helpful for you. Any comments, questions, I'd be happy to hear them. Just let me know, and keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.